Welcome to Power Your Life Today. I'm Kristy Jo, Mind and Body Strategist. Today you are listening to part 5 of our series, Surviving Then and Now, presenting the world with more understanding, insight, and tools to prevent suicide. I lost my oldest brother in 2012 to suicide through a series of unfortunate events that happened quickly. I miss him terribly and am reminded of his absence often. Since that time, I have wanted to understand more of the psychology and emotions that can lead into this state of mind. Chronic depression and coping as a wife and mother is our topic of conversation with Tara, who has chosen to remain anonymous due to the sensitive nature of our discussion. She discusses how she has coped with the ups and downs, how miracles have kept her on this earth, and how she has grown her toolbox of how to keep herself safe when she spirals into the dark places. Her experience, compassion, and perspective will bring tears to your eyes as you listen with a new understanding and even greater love for each day you live. Please share this with other mothers who may need to feel they are not alone. Together, we can change the stigma. We can start the dialogue. We can make a difference in the lives of one person at a time. Let's start this out by you telling us how your day was today. How are you feeling right now?
I'm pretty exhausted, to be honest. I had a really long night, didn't sleep very good. I have insomnia most nights, and the days that, it catches up after 2, 3, 4 days. Today I'm going on probably my 4th night of no sleep, and so I woke up this morning and I knew that today was going to be a hard day, and then I had to fight pretty dang hard to accomplish the things I need to accomplish with being a mom and a wife, and everything else falls into that whole category.
Mm-hmm. When you say fight, what do you mean by that?
Fight physically, mentally, spiritually, in all aspects. I mean, I really had to dig deep down in myself and say, you know what? We've got to use some of the tools that I've learned to cope with anxiety. I think my anxiety outweighed my depression today. They tend to reflect one another. For me, I think depression outweighs the anxiety, but some days anxiety is more potent than depression in psychological terms. Anxiety and depression usually go together. So today, anxiety was pretty high just because I was tired, I was restless, and I got up and I just, it was like, go brush your teeth. You'll be all right. Go brush your teeth. That was my first step. Brush my teeth. Get me some caffeine.
Get a little win.
I've learned that some of my triggers, and they're really basic things in life, like we have to have them every day. If I'm dehydrated, or if I'm hungry, or if I'm tired, these things are huge triggers for me. I didn't realize it till later in kind of breaking down the process of, how am I going to deal with my everyday? Because I can't curl up on the couch and stay there. That's not, my kids need a mom, and my husband needs a wife, and I've got to participate in their everyday life. And if it's me just being present, that's all that matters to me right now. I just have to get through. And it's day by day. Some days I'm a little more active with them. Some days I'm a lot more active with them. And some days, it's like, we're going to read some books today. We're going to watch some movies. We'll eat some popcorn. I'll listen to some music. You guys listen to music. Some days are like that. So today was one of those days where I kind of gathered my kids up. We got some books. We had our little bit of reading. And then, I was like, let's go back in the back and we'll sit in the sunshine and swim in the pool today. That was all that I had set for us to do. But it was enough. I was engaged with my kids, but I really, mentally, I had to grasp a lot of things. Dive into my toolbox, and a couple things that I did today to self-care was I sit in the sunshine, let the sun really blare right on my face, listen to some music. if you listen to all types of genres of music, you tend to feel the lyrics. And there's lots and lots and lots of songs that reflect depression and suicide. You can hear it. And the more and more you listen to music, the more and more you pick it up. For instance, Logic is a rapper, and he just came out with a song, and it's about suicide. And the title of the song is Suicide Hotline Number. And sometimes music is really dark and depressing, and some of it's very uplifting. You listen to Logic's new song, and first part of his lyrics is, I don't want to be alive.
No point to me waking up. Everybody's time I'm taking up. I got nobody. It ain't a shoulder near. I can't stay here and it's colder there.
And you go further into this music, into the song, and at the end of the song, it goes to, I want to be alive. So it kind of goes through a transformation of beginning to end of where all of us feel, those have experienced suicide and depression. So for me, I listened to that song many times today. It was a good outlet for me.
Part of the coping, part of those tools you're talking about diving into. Well, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing where you're at today. I think that gives us an interesting start to a little bit more perspective, which is what we're all seeking today. As you share your story, what we hope our listeners will gather as a result of today is more enhanced perspective, awareness, perhaps compassion, learning more of how we can better react or act, no matter which state we're all in, whether as a support or as a person going through these things. So you have children. You are a wife. Tell us about this toolbox. How long have you had it? How far back does this go, the need to dive into it?
Oh, my toolbox has evolved over time. Stemming back from when I was a child, I filled my toolbox with lots of distractions, and those distractions were riding my bike, playing soccer, playing basketball, engaging with friends, spending time with my family, things that we all do day in and day out, but those were significantly my go-to number one things for years and years and years. I mean, years as in from elementary school till I graduated from high school.
So you're saying as a child you struggled with dark thoughts, or what did you deal with as a child?
As a child, I wasn't aware of the feelings that were present. I remember feeling sad often, like someone would make a comment. Like I remember back in second grade, someone made fun of me about my glasses. And, we all get made fun of. It's all different. But for me, it had a huge impact on me. Like I can still feel that emotion inside of me. Even as I'm talking about it, it kind of penetrates. And for me, it's been very difficult to let go of things. And it's not that I haven't forgiven. It's just my personality and the way that I feel emotion is very different. So I clear back to second grade. Like I was very, very young. But things like that, it kind of added up over time, and I didn't realize the impact that they had on me, and I didn't recognize the emotion at the time. I think we tend to avoid talking about certain subjects with our children because it's hard. I mean, there's conversations that I've had with my kids that it's like, what do you understand what stress is? Do you understand what sadness is? Do you understand what forgiveness is? Do you know those emotions? Are you in tune with yourself to know what those actually feel like? And over time, me and my husband and my kids have experienced some things that have been a good avenue for us to explore these different topics. And with me, I feel it's very important, like my kids will see me on the couch and be like, what's wrong, Mom? And I don't turn to them and say, oh, I just am tired. I'll turn to them and say, you know what, I'm feeling sad for a minute. And be like, well, they'll engage. They'll want to have a conversation with me. And I've learned over a long period of time to be able to communicate on, a younger child's dialogue and say, you know what, I'm sad because my brother died when I was 12. And I feel some emotion with that. I feel sadness, I feel anger, and we'll kind of talk through it. But it's allowed for me to kind of heal some of those younger year emotions that I didn't know affected me in my adult age.
Did you have the idea to start talking with your kids like this, or was it suggested by somebody else?
A combination of both. I was lucky enough to line up with an incredible therapist that taught me how to do a lot of self-reflection. And for me, for a long period of time, was learning how, because I knew as a mother that I was not meeting their needs. And for me, that was very, very difficult. But I wanted to be there for them emotionally, because I think physically they're going to be all right. And I think spiritually they're going to be all right as well, because of the support that I had, and that bounced off from me to them. But emotionally, only a mother can give a certain kind of emotional support and love. And same thing with a father, and same thing with a grandma or a grandfather, or, it's different from every person. But as a mother, it's very key. And I remember talking with my therapist and also my psychologist. Those two are huge key factors in my recovery and coping in my day-to-day everything. But I talked with my therapist, and I expressed to him, I really feel like I'm failing, and it's just making me dive deeper into this hole and making me want to kill myself even more. And he's like, you know what, let's change that. He's like, it's not going to be something that's going to change overnight, but let's change that. And I said, okay, well, I'm all yours. Like, I'm here, I'm committed. And he said, how about you engage in just being authentic with them? And and he used authentic a lot and referred to me as authentic very, very often. And I didn't quite understand it till later, but I was like, I kind of explained that to him. He's like, just be authentic with them. He's like, I think you'll figure it out, but just sit with them, just hold them, just love them, and allow them to feel in a safe place to where they can open up to you. And I was like, oh, all right. So over time, that's evolved, obviously. I've had some really deep conversations with my oldest daughter to my youngest. And these are young kids. Like, my youngest is 5. So.
Wow, yeah. Well, I find it interesting, too, as you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, if you're not putting on the mask to them, let's fast forward. They're in adult years, and we know how much our childhood can be impacted, is impacted by every little thing. You're teaching them to talk. You're teaching them the most important lessons by that authenticity. That's really beautiful. I wonder what our listeners are thinking, in terms of why aren't parents opening their mouths more and sharing and being real? I love, love, love you bringing that up. You talked about the thoughts of, wanting to kill yourself being common talk with, obviously not, well, I don't know. You tell me, with your kids, probably not, but with the therapist. How far back do those types of thoughts go? And has there been one or more, attempts?
Thoughts of suicide, I think everyone kind of, let me back up, because I don't think everyone, but I think a lot of people toy with the idea more frequently than they want to admit, which is okay. Yeah. It's okay. Looking back, my first attempt was in 9th grade. And before that, I probably thought about it probably 6th grade, somewhere around there. I
Wow.
mean, it's hard to really, when my thought process changed from just being sad into wanting to take my life, it's very hard to define a line. But I do remember, again, back in elementary school, feeling those sad feelings, and then I had a brother die when I was 12, and that took me into 7th grade. And then from there, it was a whole different category of depression that I've never experienced. So 9th grade was my first attempt. And then from then, through high school, I made a few other attempts, very mild, very amateur. But I do remember very vividly one attempt that I didn't even know was an attempt. It was after I'd had my first baby, and she was probably 6 months old, and I don't think I know I was experiencing postpartum depression to a very intense level. And she was a very, very difficult baby. But I do remember my husband is an avid hunter and has a whole slew of guns. And I remember taking one of his guns, and I drove clear across town, 30 minutes away, clear to the other side of the town. And my plan was to kill myself. I was really, really scared, really fearful. I had a lot of emotions going on. I didn't know how to process them. I didn't have the tools to figure it out. I didn't feel like I could reach out to anyone. I couldn't feel it was chaos in my head, and I didn't know how to calm that chaos down. And so for me, my easiest or the simplest solution for me was to kill myself. And so my plan, again, drove clear across town, parked in a parking lot, totally awkward spot. Like it was, I hadn't thought about it more than probably 10 minutes, got the gun and drove. And it just so happened that a cop actually saw me, and I was just sitting in my car not doing anything. But he passed, and he stopped, rolled down his window, and says, "Everything okay?" And of course, my answer immediately was, yeah, I'm good. Not a problem. No big deal. And he's like, all right, just wanted to check on you. And I was like, well, I appreciate it. Thank you. And that was enough for me to reset. That was enough for me to be like, all right, get my head on straight. I need to drive back home. And that was my first very vivid suicide attempt that was extremely real. And had that cop not shown up, I probably would have put that gun to my head.
Wow.
Now,
talk about
fast forward,
perfect timing, huh?
Right. Miracles after miracles in my life that have kept me on this earth. Fast forward to about 3 years ago, a slew of things adding up, and we talk about my toolbox. After high school, I no longer had my sports. I no longer had my social life. I no longer had the tools that I once had in my toolbox. And I did not know how to cope with life. Didn't know how to handle the stressors. I didn't know how to handle my family. I didn't know how to handle my new husband. I didn't know how to handle my new baby. I mean, I didn't know how to handle my religious callings. I mean, it was thing after thing after thing. And the only way I ever knew how to deal with it was to ride my bike and play sports. And I no longer had any of that. And so I fell into
Were you a young mom? Just curious. Or when did you get married and all this? Because you talked about just leaving high school.
I was married at 19.
Okay.
And had my first baby at 20.
Wow.
So it was pretty quick. I was young, really young. But
great transition, yeah.
I was also very mature though at that age. For me, I knew what I wanted in a husband. I was very aware of the things that I wanted, what I didn't want. So when the right one came around for me, it was very easy. So fast forward to about 3 years ago, and and I look back and I remember the day very clearly as to what happened, but those weren't the reasons why I chose to make another suicide attempt. Those were just stressors and triggers. Mm-hmm. And I ultimately think that the depression got so heavy that depression became suicide. I had no out. I had no relief. I couldn't breathe. I was drowning. I mean, you hear these phrases over and over and over, but how often do you actually get to express those emotions and actually be heard? You hear yourself talk, and you can talk to others, but do they receive what you say with authenticity?
Do you feel like people tried to just fix you or cover up or try to tell you to snap out of it? Did you ever feel like that?
Oh, yeah. And people tell you that all the time. Just get over it. You'll be fine. Just get over it. Get some medication. You'll be fine. Get over it. And that is the last thing that you should say to someone that is experiencing depression and contemplating suicide. The last thing. Because you are trying to get over it.
What's the first thing you should say to somebody? Or is there anything?
It's a hard question to answer because every situation is different. You can't walk into a room of 100 people and say, I care about you, and have them actually believe you. I mean, I'm surrounded by loved ones that tell me all the time, I care about you, I love you, I'm concerned for you. And how often does that actually penetrate into my heart and I actually feel it? Very, very rarely. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm curious what it feels like because I've never experienced that, so I'm trying to envision the way you're describing. I'm imagining a big, thick, black blanket hanging between me and other people that is so strong that no matter if they shined a flashlight, I couldn't see that light because that black blanket was so thick. Does that description work?
Yeah, it does work. And my description is, I call it the thick swear word of life. So if you kind of fill in the blank, the phrase that I've referred to often is it's the thick blank of life. So for a lot of people,
all our listeners are getting creative filling in that blank.
Right. But you can relate to that, right? I mean, there's some way you can relate to that, whether it be something simple or something extremely heavy and deep. You can relate to that.
Yeah.
I think being authentic with someone and not feeling like going into a situation where you feel like you have to fix the situation, that was the worst thing for me, is when someone came to my door or came up to me when they saw me in the store or whatever, was, what can I do to help you? I hate the word help. I hate it. Hate it. And the reason why I hate it is because help makes you sound like you need help when your car breaks down. You need help when you failed on a test and you need help trying to make your grade better. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah. Like you don't want to feel broken or weak or less than because you're not.
It's more of like, you know what? I'm actually a person. I'm a human being. I can hear that you're wanting to be there for me, but I'm not a charity case for you. That's the biggest thing. If you see someone bleeding, what do you automatically do? You get a bandage. You tape it up.
Yeah.
You put it, you address it. And people with mental illness, specifically depression and suicide, you can't do that. You can't just walk up to someone and be like, hey, I see that you're bleeding. Let me get a Band-Aid for that. It doesn't work like that. It's a period of, I have been so fortunate to have the support group that I do. Again, I mentioned my therapist and my psychiatrist. I met with them 3 times a week the first little while. But I also had incredible family, incredible husband, my children, and my best friend. I mean, it was a lot of the time, it was someone came to my house and picked me up. They didn't ask how I was that day because they knew that I was not doing good. They knew that I was struggling, but they'd pick me up and be like, "Hey, let's go get a soda," and we'd go get a soda, and we'd listen to music really loud, because they knew that music has been my one of my number one go-tos in my toolbox now. Or because I'm not a reader, but the atmosphere was so calming to me and so relaxing, and it was a safe place. It was one of those places that I designated a safe place for myself. And I have those designated places. It's my work atmosphere, Barnes & Noble, a friend's house, a certain location in town. There's certain safe places that I will go when I need to kind of reset.
Well, I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking a little bit more about the situation 3 years ago. Can you briefly take us through that? And I'm curious to know what that was like after your attempt, especially emotionally for you. Because I can't imagine if you decide that it's over and then you have to accept a new reality that it's actually not, what that is like.
Let's see if I can answer your question the best. That night, it was very odd how I ended up where I was. I specifically remember grabbing my husband's gun, and at that point I just didn't care anymore. It's like, I don't care. I don't care if I go kill myself. I don't care what the effect is going to be on someone else. Deep down inside I cared, but I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
You can care and not care in the same category. That happens. But there was no resolution. I was just like, you know what? Screw this life. I don't see my future changing. I don't feel like there's going to be an improvement. Took his gun, and I had been in contact. My best friend actually knew how bad I was struggling, and so she was very, very aware. Lucky me. But was asking very potent questions. For instance, like she said, "What are you doing?" And I'd tell her, I said, "I'm going for a drive." She's like, "Well, where are you driving to?" I was like, I don't know. And I wasn't going to tell her.
Yeah.
But it was potent. It made me think for a second. 3 more seconds of life that I had. "What are you listening to on the radio?" "Well, I don't have the music on right now." "Well, why aren't you listening to music? You always listen to music." I just don't feel like it. And just these pushing questions. It wasn't like, "Well, how are you?" It was very specific. "Did you wear your favorite shirt today? What color shirt you're wearing? What is your favorite color today? Did your color change today?" And these questions kept going and going and going. And at this point, I'm part of 5 different spots in town, and I just couldn't figure out the right spot. And I said, "I don't really care who finds me. I'm gonna just park in this parking lot here." I went through all that process of, who's going to be the first to find me? Is it just going to be some random person? Is it going to be a cop? Is it going to be a family member? I had really, at this point in time, I had, where am I going to put the gun on my head? What's going to have the most damage? Is it for sure going to happen? I'd gone through so many attempts that I didn't care who would find me. I didn't care if it was a citizen or a cop or my family member at that point. I just didn't care. And so I just chose a parking lot and stuck to that. And I'm sitting there, and I've got the gun loaded and cocked and ready to go. And, I take a deep breath, and fear settled in me really deep for a minute. And then I felt really calm and at peace. And a lot of people have expressed that they feel the calmness and relief, that they're at peace with their choice. And that's usually, I think, when people ultimately decide to take their life. It's when they feel that peace for a second, because it feels so good, because you haven't felt it for so long. And for miracles on miracles on miracles, I happened to just look down at my phone and see my friend say, "I love you, and I care about you, and I'd like to come get you." And again, that took 3 seconds of my life to regroup and to put the gun down and actually say, "Okay, I will let you. I will let you help me." And for me, that was the turning point, is people want to be there for you, but you have to let them. And you have to be willing to be authentic and real with yourself and actually dive deep inside to heal those wounds that you may have, or the sadness that you feel, or the destructive thoughts that linger. I have pages and pages and pages of things that I've written that they're very, very dark, that I would never in my life want anyone else to read. But it's authentic and it's honest. And there have been some things that I have shared with others to help them understand the position that I was in, that I am in from time to time. But as a person, you have to know that other people do love you, and they do care about you, and they do want to be a light in your darkness. But you have to choose to let that be present. When you feel you have no other choice in any other part of your life, let that be one.
Well, it's like you and I were talking before we started recording, that you're given a lot of opportunities to share with people. And you mentioned briefly how many people actually open up when you've provided that safe space to talk. I mean, what do you think about the fact that there are so many people dealing with depression or anxiety or suicidal thoughts? Like, how does that make you feel when you think of people not talking or feeling unheard?
I get it. I get why people turn away from it, and I get why people why suicide and depression has such a bad stigma, because it's too heavy for most people to grasp or understand. It hurts my heart to know that suicide is one of the leading ways of death. But along with that, I need to express that when you hurt, I hurt as well. These people aren't in the battle alone, and they feel alone. We all feel alone. And I think the stigma can be changed if we can, as suicide survivors, suicide attempt survivors, if we can allow the authenticity and vulnerability to be present, I think as a group we can change the stigma and people's ideas of mental illness. And it's just like someone having cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Life truly is a healing process. It's always evolving. It's always changing.
Well, and I I kind of wish this was video so people could see our faces, because my eyebrows are scrunched together as I'm considering, there's 7 billion people in this world. We are dealing with a very complex issue here. It's in the top 10 ways that people are leaving this world. Top 10. And especially the different interviews that are a part of this series, this is just the tiniest little morsel of actually what's going on and the different demographics, that the fact that this can happen to anyone, anytime, anywhere in a unique way. Shame on us if we don't talk about it. Shame on us if we hide. And I applaud you for your willingness to share this, because just what you said today has given, I think, each of us that may potentially deal with it or know somebody going through this, completely unique ideas and thoughts. Just in you sharing what your friend did, like, what a powerful message and ideas. I think a lot of times we don't know. Like you said, it's too heavy. It's too much to grasp. And the typical human being is going to shy away from something they don't feel comfortable with. And so then what do we end up with? People who are alone, people not being heard. So on so many levels, thank you. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's very healing.
If this resonated with you, please share it with one person who comes to mind. Investing in yourself is the best investment you're ever going to make, because when you improve your life, everybody around you improves their lives too. Subscribe to this channel so you are really sure to catch our next power session together, so you can continue to power your life to one of more service, value, and love. Until then, power your life today.